As a lawyer, you can tell me much better.
You literally have to do a PhD in everything to become a good entrepreneur.
And he pretended to be very offended. He was a 67-year-old man.
It's not about getting the other person and just tying them into difficult clauses and getting the best out of them. The other person, it's not like you're not getting him into a slavery agreement.
I'm just wondering what's the point of the legal system, the judge and everything.
Can you imagine the level of specialization that this field also has, right?
Very bad with this legal stuff, so I'm sorry I can't add much.
Assalamu alaikum. This is Fahad Masud Loan, and a lot of you know me as the entrepreneurs trying to make it. And what you don't know about me is the fact that my complete academic journey was in the field of law. So I did my LLB, then I went on to do my bar, and then I also ended up doing my LLM. So the reason I'm telling you this is that this particular piece of information is very relevant for today's discussion. And for that, I have with me my friend and my junior from my alma mater, Ahmed Imran.
Hi
Over to you, Ahmed.
guys, how are you guys doing? I feel a little awkward. I have a restaurant, a takeaway by the name of Buka Brigade, and I have suffered a lot when it comes to laws and all that. So that's about it.
And I think this, I just happened to meet Ahmed somewhere. And I remember seeing one of his videos where he was talking about that experience. And I think we both make content surrounding business ideas, about how you can improve in your business, and tips that help you understand certain aspects of business that do not really come to the surface unless you have gotten your hands dirty with it. And one such piece of content I happened to come across that was made by Ahmed. And then I just happened to meet Ahmed, and then I floated this idea that I think we've had experiences regarding this. Both of us have had some mostly negative and some positive experience regarding this. And I thought of just having this discussion because I think this is something that's very crucial when it comes to businesses, early businesses, and when it comes to growing and scaling your business.
I think what school of life teaches you is very different from what the schools teach you. And even when you're studying law, you've studied law, it's very different over there. And in real life, it's pretty different. And I've had that experience because I had a franchise agreement that went bad. It was a bad agreement. I have to be self accountable for that. But now I understand in hindsight, I know that I needed a good lawyer and I never got a good lawyer. And I had other issues. The lawyers that were really good weren't affordable. But then again, self accountability. So I think as a lawyer, you can tell me much better that
Okay. So even if I try to tell you as a lawyer, my advice would be very limited. I think this is something that you have to look from multiple lenses. Not only do you have to look at it from the lens of being a lawyer, but you also have to look at it from the lens of an entrepreneur. And only once you look at it from both aspects, then you really get to really understand that as an entrepreneur, how you need to go about these things, right? Because when I saw your video, I instantly realized that any entrepreneur, the most ideal thing for an entrepreneur is growth. And the best way to grow is through collaborations. You keep trying to make it on your own, it takes a lot of time, right? And when you have more muscle power, there's someone who's already made it and he's willing to take you along. Collaborations can be all different things, right? You're talking about franchise agreements, right? So what is essentially a franchise agreement? Franchise agreement is one business telling the world that I have made it, I've built a successful model, it gives you returns, I've standardized the whole processes, and all you need to do is that you need to give me some capital and you need to have some capital of your own as well. And then I can help you set up a business that will be mutually beneficial. So it will help you earn some money as well, while at the same time, it will help me grow as well. That's exactly what a franchise agreement in a nutshell is. And without collaborations, the speed at which you grow is always very, very limited, right? And the sad thing about collaborations is that only after you have agreed upon how to collaborate, that's when you find out what it's going to be like collaborating with the other person. So you then come back to square one. It's the agreement. It's the legal agreement that you end up drafting and signing with the other party that will, in the short run and the long run, determine the entire course of that relationship. That will determine the entire extent of that collaboration and how productive and how fruitful it would be in the longer run. Help us understand, give us a bit of an idea that how did you go about that whole process?
Oh wow, I made a lot of mistakes. For example, the agreement had a lot of loopholes, and when the franchisee franchisor agreement went bad, the other party, we took the other party to the court, and our lawyers told us that we can't do that much damage to them, and even they probably can't do a lot of damage to us. But of course, things weren't clear, the lines weren't clear. For example, nobody knew who the assets belonged to at the end of the day. And that sort of gave us a hard lesson. That wasted a lot of time. Time equals money. Some agreements that were clear, actually, they went through the court really fast. And unfortunately, they were against us. For example, we had an agreement with Metro Pakistan that we would pay them within 60 days. And right after 60 days, our lawyer told us that if we don't, we are going to be landing into hot waters, and there's no other way. And as an entrepreneur, I've understood one thing. Yes, collaborations do come in, but I think before that, you really need to know the basics of everything. So you need to know the law. For example, as a restaurant owner, I need to know, how the taxation authority is going to deal with me, how the health departments are going to deal with me.
You literally have to do a PhD in everything to become become a good
Ye-
entrepreneur.
yes, and after you're done with that, that's when the collaborations come in. And I think if you're collaborating in terms of like the agreement, like you're bringing in a franchisee, because I think
Mm.
I'll be the franchisor. Bad with that
Yeah.
terminology, as you can see. I think you need to be sort of very clear with what you can give and what the other person can give you, and you need to write that down on a piece of paper and not just discuss it with one lawyer. I think you should discuss it with a couple of lawyers. And I think you have Google and you have ChatGPT, so you need to.
Exactly.
uh,
Exactly. What I want to ask you specifically is that in this negative experience of yours,
mm,
how exactly did you go about this whole drafting procedure? Like you knew that you had to collaborate with someone, right?
mm,
Once you decided that, okay, I'm going to collaborate with this one.
mm,
At some point in time, there must have come a discussion, okay, let's put it on pen and paper. Let's get a
mm,
legal
mm.
argument,
Mm.
legal agreement in, right? What happened after that?
So you want my personal story? My
No, I'm not. If you're not comfortable telling the exact specifics of the story, I'm just
I am.
okay.
I
But,
am.
huh, but
I am.
that'll be great. But
Huh.
along with it, I want you to focus on the procedural aspect of it as well,
Okay.
so that we
So
can dissect it and see what went wrong and where we can fix those issues.
as a lawyer, you're gonna do that. I'll just tell you how my
Yeah,
journey
yeah, yeah,
went.
yeah. Perfect.
So I went to my lawyers. I asked them for an agreement. They gave me an agreement. I went to the guy who was basically who was the franchisee, basically the potential franchisee, and he told me that this agreement was a piece of crap, and I am trying to rip him off. And then he tore that agreement and he said that we have another agreement. If you And he pretended to be very offended. He was a 67-year-old man. So
Mm.
when you see a 67-year-old man booted, suited, feeling offended, you sort of lose your ground and your confidence, and you think that you've done something wrong. So my partner, because she was taking the lead on this whole thing, she was like, I think we should go with this particular agreement. And that agreement was incredibly ambiguous, and that's where the trouble started from.
Okay.
Mm,
So let me just break this down,
mm,
right?
mm,
So what happens is that entrepreneurs normally aren't legal experts, right?
mm,
So the first problem comes in when you're in the selection of the lawyer,
mm,
right? So if you just look at your situation, the lawyer that you went to, he would have been just a random family lawyer that someone would have recommended to you. I'm just guessing.
mm.
Correct me if I'm wrong, right? And you just went to him and asked him for a standard franchise agreement that you're running a restaurant and you want to franchise it and you want to uh, add on a franchisee and just give me a legal agreement that will help you do that, right? Is that how it happened?
No, he wasn't a family friend. He was one of our seniors, and he's from Harvard Law School. So he knew, like, it was our decision to not sort of go with that agreement.
Okay, so
So we messed up.
so the selection in the original selection of the lawyer was perfect,
Yes,
right?
it
So
was.
that's something very important, right? You got it right, but normally this is where people end up making the biggest errors, right? They go for friendships, they go for someone they know, someone in their family knows, that's the lawyer that they prefer to going to, right? You would be surprised to see that even law is such a specialized field. I remember that when I was studying, I found out that there was this whole number of firms that dealt specifically with laws pertaining to bananas that were being imported into the UK. Can you imagine the level of specialization that this field also has, right? So, the first thing in selecting any lawyer is that you should understand that the problem that you're facing, the other person must have a lot of exposure to that problem. Until and unless the lawyer has decent exposure to that problem, they would not understand all the lagunas. They would not understand all the points where the conflicts happen. They would not understand all the points which are which have to be covered in the agreement to make sure that this is a long-term agreement, right? And the second thing with your story is this term that we use in our culture, and I think that is something that you suffered here. That's called muravat.
Muravat is a very respectful word you use for somebody who is into people pleasing. So it's basically people pleasing, and there is no honor in that. And you just get stabbed in the back once you get into all of that muravat.
But at the time that you are doing something
Mhm.
out of muravat,
Mhm.
you think that you're taking the high ground,
Yes, you
right?
think that actually you're just trying to avoid pain and conflict.
In
You know,
the in the
in the short run,
in the
I could have
short
just
run.
told that man that, you know what, this is not what you're saying it is. I'm
Hmm.
not trying to be a gimmick. I'm not trying to rip off.
Hmm.
I think you're playing me. You're scaring me into accepting your agreement. But I neither had any confidence nor had the understanding, and the confidence comes from the understanding of the law again.
Again,
Mm.
so I'm going to drift away from law for a little bit. Right
Mm.
now, this is a business thing, right?
Mm.
And I it happens to me literally almost on a daily basis.
Mm.
I think as human beings, we are designed to avoid hard and difficult conversations.
Yes. Are we designed that way?
I think so.
Okay.
You agreed with the statement that I just made, right?
Yes, yes.
I feel that way, and I
Mm.
think everybody feels like that. Like I would rather not have a difficult conversation, if given the opportunity, if given the chance. And I think so many times. I'll give you a personal example, right? There's certain people that call you, and you don't want to take their call. That happens a lot, right? Because there's certain things that can be resolved on a text,
Mm.
and they tend to just like when you get a call, they're gonna take up like a good 20-30 minutes of your time, right? And sometimes it's not just that, sometimes you just don't want to talk to talk to that person, and you think that okay, this thing can be resolved via text,
Mm.
then why should we do it on a call, right? And so many times it happens that I get a call, and I used to avoid picking that call up. It's not like ultimately I'm not going to have to call him back. I am going to, right?
Mm.
But in that moment, I think that I'm doing something that's more convenient or more comfortable for me.
Mm.
But what I'm not realizing is that I'm just piling up work for myself. In the moment I take that call, it takes a couple of minutes, maybe 5 minutes, and I get done with it, right?
Mm.
So I think I am personally designed in such a way to avoid hard conversations, right? So, but from an entrepreneur's point of view, that's the worst thing that you can do. Because if you avoid hard conversations on day one, on day 30, they're going to come back and the scale of that problem is going to be menacing and devastating.
Mm.
Had you addressed that problem on day one, you might have felt a little bad about yourself internally. But on day 30, when you set out to resolve that problem, you're not even in a position to feel anything. That's how big that problem becomes. So that's the second thing. That's nothing to do with law, but I think all the hard conversations, because I think he put you on the spot.
Yeah,
Uh,
exactly.
he put you on
Exactly.
the spot, and you didn't want to address that thing particularly.
Yeah, I didn't want to be on the spot. I was like, what's happening?
Yes. So
Mm.
and you just agreed with the agreement that he presented to you. So let's just get over with it. So that's the worst thing that you can do, especially I'm talking about generally everything in business, and especially when it comes to signing legal agreements, right? Because what happens with legal agreements is, uh, before you make any legal agreement, what happens is that there's a lot of conversation happening. You're telling him that I'm going to do this, I'm going to hit this much in sales, my product is really good. and blah 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 and all of that stuff. And that person is saying that I have loads of money, you deliver on this, and then I'll make this, we'll have like 30 more collaborations and stuff like that's happening. That's natural, that happens in every business conversation, right? But the problem is ultimately when you enter the relationship, all that conversation goes into the background. I think all that conversation actually gets deleted. Only those parts that you choose to write in that agreement, they are the only things that are relevant going forward, irrespective of whatever representations you've made to each other during the course of those conversations. So that's why though that piece of paper then ultimately becomes extremely important.
I think you should, whatever you write on that piece of paper, there's this term these guys in the army use. It's called wargaming. You should look at the agreement, sit down with the lawyer and with the friend, and sort of read through it, and just try to create situations that if this happens, what are you going to do? If that happens, how is this protecting you? And if you go through that line by line, I think you'll solve 90% of the and problems, and you'll probably even understand that you need to know enough to see that if your lawyer is not playing around with you. Because I got played around with my lawyer also later on when things went south. The first lawyer that I got used to ask me for there's this term that they call speed money, and he used to say that this will really so I would pay
Help
that.
streamline the whole process.
Yes, and you need to know this how it works in Pakistan. Okay,
Mm.
so I would pay 100,000 for something, and then he'll sort of create this excitement that we've gotten a stay. There's something called a stay. I don't even know what that is. And the next day, I'll get to know that the stay can also be sort of
Vacated.
exactly. And I would be like, then what was the point of that? Didn't you know it beforehand that it would be, you know? And he'll be like, you don't understand this, and I was like, I'm not gonna argue with my own lawyer, but I need a new lawyer. So I changed my lawyer, and man, it was a crazy experience.
Again, okay, so we have to understand how we can avoid this whole fiasco in the
Hmm.
longer run. So it starts off with that piece of paper
Hmm.
and what you write on that piece of paper.
Hmm.
You're absolutely right. Like running contingency plans, right?
Hmm.
Okay, what will happen if this were to happen? What will happen if he does not fulfill that part of the agreement? Playing it out in the future. How this thing will play out if something were to happen in the future. That's the perfect way to go about it. But without a proper lawyer assisting you in that scenario imagining process, right? You will not understand how the court is going to look at it
Hmm.
or how the court will interpret it, because that's a lens with which you'll need to look at it. Because you need to understand, okay, this is what we have written. How will the court interpret it? And what relief is the court going to give based on the interpretation that they have in their mind? So that's the lens with which you draft this agreement. So that's again, a seasoned lawyer is in a very good position to understand that how is the court going to look at it.
Exactly.
And the second thing, what happens is the reason why I'm telling you that the relevant lawyer is very important, right? Because a franchisor franchisee agreement is something that's happening all across the border. That happens day in, day out. There you see so many successful franchisors and franchisees. And obviously, their legal agreement is such that's making their relationship productive,
Hmm.
right? So, a person who has been exposed to all those businesses, he understands the nuances. He understands where the conflicts will happen. He understands what are those things that need to be addressed in this piece of paper to make this agreement long term, to make this agreement mutually beneficial in the longer run, right? A lot of lawyers, especially in our part of the world, right? What they do is they try to create a coercive agreement for one party, and they take immense pride in that.
Hmm.
Oh, I have gotten you a deal that you could not have imagined, right? But those coercive agreements do not last long. Your example is one
Hmm.
classic example of
Hmm.
that, right?
Hmm.
The moment the other person realizes that the amount of effort that I'm putting into this relationship is way less than the benefit I'm getting out of it, and the other person is getting so much more benefit, the other person can just choose to not perform at all. And then all that pride and victory that you were feeling from getting that coercive agreement just ends up giving you some benefit for 3 months, 4 months, and then it just goes down the drain. So, from a lawyer's perspective, the most important thing is that the more mutually beneficial a business contract is, the more long term it would be. That's what I've seen from my experience. It's not about getting the other person and just tying them into difficult clauses and getting the best out of them. The other person, it's not like you're not getting him into a slavery agreement. It's
Exactly. You're not supposed to oppress the other person.
yes, it's a voluntary agreement.
Exactly.
And obviously there are exits to it as well. It's not about getting the most like the it's the more balanced it is, the more long term it would be. So a lawyer having both those experiences, right? How it will play out in court. Plus, in this type of business or in this line of business is where do the conflicts occur? So that he can sit you down as two individuals and tell you that these are the things that you need to discuss, have those difficult conversations right now, and decide upon those things, so that in the case of a conflict or in the case where you no longer see things with the same perspective, you're able to continue without causing too much damage to your agreement, or you can at least plan an exit without causing too much damage to yourself and your respective businesses. So that's the job of a lawyer. But then come to the next problem, right? Early on, I think you were operating just one branch
Yes.
when you and this agreement was for the second branch,
Second branch,
right?
exactly.
So probably you do not have the luxury of crazy cash flows where you can bring in an expensive lawyer,
Exactly.
right? And this kind of lawyer who can look at things from this lens and so holistically is going to cost you a lot, right? So here comes the problem that should I spend on this? Should I not spend on this? And mostly what I've seen is that people tend to benefit from spending. This is like an investment into your future. You might not realize the cost impact right now, but later on, had that been drafted properly, that might have just set you on that path for growth and scaling. But because it didn't happen, you were forced through an experiment. And once you came out on the other side of the tunnel, you have still not been able to grow and scale like that. Right. So, in hindsight, you might feel that if I had the money and if I had found the right person, I would have not bothered to think, okay, I'm a small business, I can't afford this expense. I would have conjured up the courage to make that expense, because now you can appreciate how important it might have been for you. Do you agree with me?
I do 100%. Obviously, my case was a little different. I did have access to a good lawyer in the beginning. I just didn't have access to my own confidence. That's a different story. But yes, I agree with you 100%.
But that piece of puzzle is solved again
Yes, it's completely
because
solved.
of ChatGPT, because of AI. Right now, understanding what your agreement needs to do, there's so much that you can get done without any human involvement.
Yes,
There's so much valuable feedback that you can get even without involving an actual lawyer, right?
true.
I agree that the importance of an actual lawyer has not been eradicated, but it has been significantly reduced. You can understand, if you give it right amount of time and if you ask the right questions, you can literally create an agreement that literally covers 70, 60, 70, 80% of it. And then you can bring in a lawyer to cover up for the remaining bits that AI is still not capable to do.
That's true. That's
Mhm.
absolutely true. I recently made an agreement with an attorney. He wanted to be with us, so he was obviously he'd access to the recipes and everything. And I literally made that agreement using Chat GPT, and then I sent it to a lawyer. And I was like, "Do you?" I mean, of course, I had this back and forth with with Chat GPT. I would add a few things, take out a few things, and but eventually, when the final draft was sent to the lawyer didn't really have anything to sort of add to it. He was like, "It's perfect. There's nothing to add to." And I was quite surprised. I would like, you can do basic things using AI. I think you can sort of even ask ChatGPT to teach you the basics of law or the questions you should be asking your lawyer.
It can make it apt from a legal perspective as well. Previously, what used to happen was that I used to see a lot of entrepreneurs thinking that they know exactly what they want from their agreement
Mm.
and just choosing to draft it on their own, right? We both were having this conversation before we started recording that we are good when it comes to written expression or verbal expression in the English language, right? And a lot of people have that confidence. And once they have that confidence, they used to think that, okay, I know exactly what I want from this agreement. I know what I'm supposed to do and I know what I want the other party to do. I can draft a Word document that covers all these pointers, and that's sufficient for me for a legal agreement, right? But previously that was not the case, right? Because you did not have any independent evaluator who could tell you, is this piece of writing legally apt or not, right? And the only person who could do that was a paid professional, a lawyer. Now 80% of that can be fixed through AI, and that remaining bit, that you just need to go and consult with the lawyer, and then you can have a completely holistic agreement. So Emma, tell us, in your experience, you did end up going to court.
Yes.
Okay.
It,
How was that like? Just try to give us a summary.
it was a drag. It was the civil court that we eventually went to. And every day the lawyer would tell us that, this is going to happen. And, eventually we kind of realized after about a year and a half into the journey that, you just need to forget about it. We're paying his fees. We need to pretend that it'll happen. And I'll be very honest, it didn't really work out. Quite a spiritual experience with me. I think, can we talk about that over
Yeah,
here?
yes. Let's do it.
Okay, because this isn't a legal experience at all. My father-in-law told me to sort of recite a couple of surahs that would help me, and this was after I had gone to every person I could for help. And I don't want to take any names. They're really powerful people, and they would just tell me the same thing that just forget about it because the people you're dealing with are really powerful. And so I would recite that for a good 2-3 months, and then I just kind of forgot about it. But then I had this faith that things would turn out fine. And one day, my family friend, who's also a lawyer, he called me up and he asked me, he's like, "Do you have that case going on?" I was like, "Yes, we do." He's like, "Well, the same party is in, they're sitting in front of me. Like, I just literally went to the next office to talk to you. And that guy's a tax lawyer. It's a big thing in when it comes to FBR and stuff. It's like they have this case in FBR that is kind of stuck, and I'm going to help them out. So if you want anything, I can sort of get it for you." And I was like, "Yeah, just ask them to sort of take the name out of the trademark,
Mm.
that race where you both apply for the name, because that's how they tried getting to us. That was the neck, you know, and that's what they did. They took out their name and they sort of said that we don't want the name anymore, and automatically I was the next applicant. So the name came to me and the story ended. So my case is pretty spiritual and very bad with this legal stuff. So I'm sorry, I can't add much.
And sorry for doing this. I'm just trying to dissect your scenario and trying to create life lessons out of it
Mhm.
from a legal and business point of view. But I think that's exactly the point of this discussion. That's how we sat down and decided to discuss about this, so that we can help other people understand that these are the things that they need to have in mind before entering into any collaboration or entering into any legal agreement
Mhm.
from their business's platform. And if you allow me, the things that you just told me, right? So number one, this is unfortunate in our part of the world. It's not exactly same in other parts of the world. You can get speedy justice as well, especially when it comes to businesses. Courts have dedicated departments that are given this prerogative that if a business issue has come up, they need to resolve it in a speedy manner, because business transactions normally do not wait. Like, they, if the business is stuck up somewhere, they probably end up shutting down. So that is something that is completely missing in our part of the world.
Mhm.
And I think, looking at our legal system, normally the advice that I give everybody is that if you have a problem, I know it might be very disturbing for your ego, and mentally you might not be ready to do it, but go and sit down with the other party. No matter how harsh or how bad the resolution they present to you, just try to go for an out of court settlement. In our part of the world, the amount of effort, the amount of time, the amount of resources that you waste trying to resolve it through courts is just, if you do the cost benefit analysis, you will come to this conclusion that I am giving you right now, that no matter how harsh the outcome is going to be, if you can come up with a quick outcome without going to the courts, it will be beneficial for you in the longer run.
Mhm.
And I think, as lawyers, especially operating in this legal system, our whole drafting procedure is guided by this one guideline. We have to draft it in such a way that they never have to go to court. Let's just pray that this never goes to court, right? That is the best solution for businessmen. That's what I've seen in my experience. Do
Explain that more.
Okay. So I think, whenever you're drafting an agreement, right, you obviously look at the fact that how will it be interpreted, how will they come to a resolution if a conflict occurs, right? But at the same time, you have this feeling inside that if it goes to court, it's not going to work out for either one. Very rare circumstances where the courts are able to perform a positive role and help resolve a dispute or a conflict. But normally it doesn't happen like that, right? So even when you're drafting, let's say you're drafting an agreement, the most
Uh, why is that?
oh that's a whole discussion on its
Okay,
own. That's a
okay.
whole discussion on its own because I think there are infrastructural problems, there are cultural problems, there are political problems, there are academic problems. Like it's a plethora of problems summed up together that leads to this chaos. So that's a discussion. That's a whole different discussion. But that's what I've seen it so many times. People spend so much time, money, resources, and at the end of the day they literally run out of life trying to resolve issues here in our legal system. And so many times I've seen that after 10, 15, 20 years of a legal battle, they then sit down in the same room across each other and then they come to a compromise, right? And if you understand the how much time, effort and resources were spent on resolving this issue, right? You will realize that it would have been so much better. Even if it had been a harsher outcome for someone, it would still have been better to have it resolved as early on as possible rather than lingering in it on so much.
I'm just wondering then what's the point of the whole the legal system, the judge and everything, if
Because every problem is not solvable like that. Na? There's still problems just in which you will not be able to sit across the room with each other. There's certain things that you need to have a system at least, right? That you can rely on. This is me just telling you a hack for speedy resolution. That's not something that normally happens.
that the system is there but
The
sort of
system is
don't depend on it too
the
much.
system is not very efficient.
Mhm.
This is me telling you a hack that if you are a businessman and you entered into an agreement with someone and now there's a conflict, just sit down with each other and come to a resolution. This is me telling you a hack because how much time and inefficiency of the legal system is going to impact you negatively that it makes much more sense to even accept a harsher outcome just because the issue is getting resolved very quickly and early on.
I think that's how people told us that you should just forget about it and sort of get a new name and get done with it. But turns out,
That's how bad the system is that they were literally telling you to change your business name, right?
yeah.
Yeah.
But there's a thing called destiny or whatever you want to call it.
Yeah.
So yeah,
And I think I would like to like conclude this whole discussion that just picking up on what you said, despite all the legal advice, getting the best lawyer, getting the best agreement, using ChatGPT, like giving it 1,000 prompts and making the most holistic agreement, I think at the end of the day, the final decision is in the hand of the entrepreneur because he's the one or she's the one who really understands that what is the need of the hour. How desperately do they need this collaboration or this particular agreement? What benefits do they see coming from this agreement in the longer run? How fruitful can be for their business in the longer run or even in the short run? Sometimes it's about like the cash flow that you need tomorrow. So, despite having received all this legal advice, having consulted with I think it comes down to the individual entrepreneur in that individual setting that what decision is going to be the most beneficial for them. What benefits or opportunities are they willing to sacrifice to get into that particular agreement? And the whole purpose of this discussion was to help them understand that whenever they are in this situation, the decision and call is always in their hands. But knowing all of this, consulting with the right people, and developing that understanding of that issue that helps them make an informed decision. In so many cases, making an informed decision helps you or protects you from bigger losses. So that's what I've seen in my 8, 9 years of doing business and a little bit of legal practice.